Florida bans transgender people from changing sex on driver's licenses to reflect gender identity. Florida is just fucking crazy, isn't it? Okay. Let's go ahead and watch this.
Meanwhile, the state of Florida will no longer allow transgender people to change the sex on their state driver's license to reflect their gender identity.
But the policy change isn't clear about people who have already updated their documents and whether they could face fraud charges. NBC 6's Ari Oster joins us live from a DMV in North Miami with reaction tonight. Ari.
Well, Juwan, this rules change happened last week when the head of Florida's Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles announced that transgender people could no longer come to a DMV office like the one here behind me and swap out their old driver's licenses for new ones with their preferred gender identity and new names on them. You're about to meet a trans person who is in the process of legally changing her name, but she can't change it on her driver's license just yet. Lila is 19, a trans woman born and raised in Florida, but she's in the midst of her transition. So to get a new driver's license reflecting her new name and gender identity, Lila says she'd have to go to a different state.
Frustration. It makes me feel frustrated that the place that I was raised no longer accepts people like me.
The director of Florida's Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles sent this letter to county tax collectors all over the state last week. He said gender is a synonym for sex at birth, and since driver's licenses are used for ID, permitting an individual to alter his or her license to reflect an internal sense of gender role or identity, which is neither immutable or objectively verifiable, undermines the purpose of an identification record and can frustrate the state's ability to enforce its laws. The trans community sees it as yet another assault on their rights.
All the laws they're passing, they're further restricting the way trans people can present in society. They want to erase us legally, restrict what we can do, and basically turn us into second-class citizens. And I can't live like that. Here I am, the big bad trans person. Do you really think that I pose a threat to society? Like, is this culture war really worth it?
Since 2018, trans people have been able to get their driver's licenses changed in Florida if they had a letter from a doctor attesting to their gender change. That policy is officially rescinded. Lila says she will continue her studies in college and then move to a trans-friendly state when she graduates.
I would rather die standing than live kneeling, so I'm going to continue as I am.
So while trans people may not be able to update their Florida driver's licenses on the federal level, it's a totally different story. They can still change their United States passports to match their gender identity. In North Miami, Ari Oster, NBC 6 News.
Incredible. It's nice to hear from... I don't want to watch this video about Kelsey Grammer. Get out of here. Okay. Is it just broken
I hear
now?
that you always have...
Okay. Kelsey, another time. All right? Yeah, so it's nice to hear from another trans person. It's nice that they went out and actually sought out somebody to comment on the issue. I feel like they really didn't say much. She really didn't say much of anything, but it's still nice that they reached out to her for comment. So yeah, I mean, the video pretty much summed it up, but let's go ahead and read the article anyway. Amid what one critic called an ongoing campaign to make Florida uninhabitable and unsafe for transgender individuals, Governor Ron DeSantis' administration quietly reversed a policy that allowed Floridians to obtain driver's licenses that reflected their gender identity. Robert Kynock, Deputy Executive Director of the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, on Friday sent a memo outlining the changes to county tax collectors who process driver's licenses and state identification cards. The memo said that allowing people to change their gender on licenses and ID cards runs afoul of state law because gender, quote, has historically been understood as a synonym for sex, which is determined by innate and immutable biological and genetic characteristics. In addition, a driver's license is an identification document and, as such, serves a critical role in assisting public and private entities in correctly establishing the identity of a person presenting the license, Kynoch wrote. Permitting an individual to alter his or her license to reflect an internal sense of gender role or identity, which is neither immutable nor objectively verifiable, undermines the purpose of an identification record and can frustrate the state's ability to enforce its laws, he added. Is this just the same video?
This morning, Florida will no longer allow transgendered people to change their sex, on their state driver's license to reflect their gender identity. On Friday, the deputy executive director of the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles wrote a memo that the department would rescind a provision on gender requirements in the driver's license operational manual. Now, Florida licenses can only be replaced when they're lost or stolen, or when the licensee has their address changed or their name, or some additional restrictions. But now it's unclear how this advisory will conflict with current federal and Florida law. Well, Florida Democrats have released a statement saying in part that the GOP continues to pursue blatant transphobic policies to serve their made-up culture wars. Erasing and criminalizing trans people is absolutely disgusting and cannot be allowed or stand for.
Okay, it really wants to show me the Kelsey Grammer video. I do not want to see the Kelsey Grammer video. I'm sorry, Kelsey. It's not your time. It's not your time.
I hear that.
Nope. The memo also warned that misrepresenting one's gender understood as sex on a driver's license constitutes fraud and subjects an offender to criminal and civil penalties, including cancellation, suspension, or revocation of his or her driver's license. Lila, a 19-year-old trans woman in the midst of her transition, told NBC6 she would have to go to a different state to get a new driver's license that reflects her name and gender identity. It makes me feel frustrated that the place I was raised no longer accepts people like me, she said. The state agency in 2018 adopted a policy allowing people to alter the genetic markers on licenses by using signed statements from physicians or court orders documenting gender changes. The policy, in part, required workers to treat people seeking such changes respectfully. In 2021, the process was expanded to allow advanced practice registered nurses to attest to the gender changes. Kynoch's memo noted the agency rescinded the policy, saying its provisions are not supported by statutory authority. Here I am, the big bad trans person. Do you really think that I pose a threat to society? Like, is this culture war really worth it? Lila said. Simone Chris, an attorney with the Southern Legal Council who helped craft the 2018 policy, told the News Service of Florida that the changes adopted by the DeSantis administration don't appear to affect trans people whose licenses already have been altered. This letter was just issued, and there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of questions that we will need answers on, but based on the statutes they've cited and the authority they've provided, there's no reason for individuals who currently have a driver's license or identification card that reflects their gender identity to be concerned about driving, going to appointments, using their ID in the traditional manner they do every day, because there's no mechanism by which the DHS-MV, the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, or the police have any authority to suspend or revoke their license, she said. The department director, Dave Kerner, began scrutinizing the agency's technical guidance and advisories after his appointment to the post by DeSantis a year ago, agency spokeswoman Molly Best said in an email when asked about the new policy. The change regarding gender pertains solely to replacement license requests, Best said. Expanding the department's authority to issue replacement licenses dependent on one's internal sense of gender or sex identification is violative of the law and does not serve to enhance the security and reliability of Florida-issued licenses and identification cards. The security, reliability, and accuracy of government-issued credentials is paramount, Best said. The agency's reversal of the policy came as state lawmakers are considering measures that propose changing the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles' use of gender on licenses. The House Select Committee on Health Innovation last week approved a bill, HB 1639, that would require licenses to reflect a person's sex based on the person's sex chromosomes, naturally occurring sex hormones, and internal and external genitalia present at birth. The bill would also impose requirements for insurers who cover gender-affirming care. Florida is among Republican-controlled states during the past few years that have taken a series of steps targeting transgender people and the broader LGBTQ community. The DeSantis administration memo about driver's licenses, which began circulating on social media Monday evening and was first reported by independent journalist Aaron Reed, drew condemnation Tuesday from trans people and allies. Taken together, the efforts amount to an attempt to legislate or regulate trans people out of existence, critics alleged. Transgender people have always existed on every continent and in every culture in recorded human history. These policies are intended to make the transgender community feel unsafe and unwelcome in Florida, and to push them out of public life entirely. This reckless policy change helps absolutely no one. It seeks to deny legal existence to tens of thousands of Floridians and was implemented with zero public notice or input to ensure maximum disruption. A former state house member who is a senior policy analyst for LGBTQ advocacy group Equality Florida said in a text. Smith, a Democrat who is running for a Central Florida Senate seat this year, called the change a devastating development and said his organization is working with our national partners and legal groups to identify our options for fighting back. Driver's license change is part of an ongoing campaign to make Florida uninhabitable and unsafe for transgender individuals. Chris is among the lawyers representing plaintiffs in a federal lawsuit challenging the state's ban on the use of puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, or surgery to treat transgender minors diagnosed with gender dysphoria. The law also made it more difficult for trans adults to receive medical care in Florida. A federal judge heard arguments in the case in December but has not ruled. Florida Republicans' obsession with trans people has to stop, said FDP Chair Nikki Fried in a statement. Instead of addressing a raging property insurance crisis or out-of-control rent hikes, the GOP continues to pursue blatantly transphobic policies to serve their made-up culture wars. Erasing and criminalizing trans people is absolutely disgusting and can't be allowed to stand. The president of the LGBTQ+ Democratic Caucus, Nathan Broomer, also issued a statement following the reversal of the policy and said that Florida should not sanction hate, violence, or cruelty. Transgender Floridians face significant consequences from policies preventing access to accurate identification documents. Being forced to live, work, and contribute in society without accurate, updated information will have immediate impacts on a community already experiencing harassment, violence, and discrimination at higher rates, Broomer said in the statement. Our government agencies must remember that their responsibility is to serve Floridians, not the failed agenda of a power-hungry governor who is out of touch with the people of Florida. Yeah, that's fair. I really don't agree with this. This Florida law, I can't imagine there is going to be any trans people that agree with this law. I think it's stupid, and the only thing it does is to serve to harm trans people. That's literally it. It doesn't protect anyone.